Our first speaker is Chúk the founding director for Future Ancestors Services Incorporated. Future Ancestors Collective is a growing database of content created and curated by them that focuses on the teachings of various anti-racism, climate justice, and ancestral accountability through a decolonized way of being. Now, Future Ancestors is an Indigenous and Black-owned, youth-led professional service social enterprise and startup that advances climate justice and equity with the lens of anti-racism and ancestral accountability. I will say that's one of the first times I've heard it, and I really love the idea. Their goal is to create a space where people can come to create their own understandings of what it means to be a future ancestor and how we can honor that responsibility. Chúk, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you and your perspective on this issue. Thank you.
Amazing. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. So, salut tout le monde. Je m'appelle Chúk Odenigbo, comme c'était mentionné. My name is Chúk Odenigbo, and I'm super French. So, although I'll be doing this presentation in English, I have bilingual slides. Follow along in your language of preference. And if I randomly accidentally change to French, je vous prie de m'excuser, mais aussi comme tous mes diapos sont bilingues, donc vous pouvez suivre. So when it comes to talking about mental health and young people, I wanted to focus on some of the things that I feel like we don't really talk about, the things that we take for granted as normal. So the concepts of space and time. And so with that in mind, we're gonna jump right in, and bonus to anyone who asks me why I picked a picture of an apple for here. Okay. So let's dive in. Little quick bio on me. Je suis franco-albertain, originaire de Calgary. So I'm a franco-albertan from Calgary. I'm not from Quebec. Shocking. And I'm currently completing a PhD in medical geography at the University of Ottawa. So medical geography is a field of study that looks at the ways in which place impacts human health. And so that's sort of really largely incorporated into this very brief presentation I'm going to give you. I'm also someone who is often visible in change-making spaces. So along with my co-founders who created Future Ancestors Services, we try and sort of change the systems that we operate in, recognizing that they don't really work for people of racialized or marginalized identities, which thereby lead us to hindering l'ensemble de notre pays. And in addition to that, I work in a lot of sort of climate active spaces. So really my passion is the environment. My passion is, protecting nature. My passion is really making sure that we create human habitats for us to live in, that our societies become human habitats that recognize that human beings are part of nature. So, bonjour y'all. Quick little note on Future Ancestors. Yusuf gave a phenomenal introduction to our organization, so I won't say much, but essentially we are a Black and Indigenous-owned youth-led professional services enterprise that seek to advance equity and climate justice through a lens of ancestral accountability. And I may touch upon that later if we have time, but otherwise let's hop into it. So the first thing I want to chat about is the concept of time. Time is a colonial construct, and this is something that a lot of us don't realize because we assume time is the way it is. But actually, time is a colonial construct. So the colonial entities, when they colonized the world effectively, they used time as a means to dehumanize racialized peoples, right? So for many of us who are racialized, we come from communities where we often joke about, oh, that's African time, oh, island time, oh, this is sort of indigenous time, right? It's like, oh, we show up late for things, or, we don't really respect sort of the clock, and, we laugh about that. But in reality, that was used as a way to say that we are subhuman, right? That we are less evolved because we're unable to follow a clock. Without that realization, that understanding that each of our cultures had a different understanding of the notion of time and how time passed, right? So to give an example, in Uganda is a country that is on the equator. Time was measured according to the movement of the sun. And so because time was measured according to the movement of the sun, and since it's an equator-based country, the movement of the sun doesn't change year round like it does in Canada. It also essentially meant that as long as you arrived and the sun was in the same position in the sky, you were on time, right? And so today, the way that sort of manifests is a lot of time if someone says show up at 2 and you show up at 4, you're still on time because the sun is still in approximately the same-ish position, right? But if you showed up at like 6 p.m., you are late. No matter who's looking at you, you're late because the sun is in a different position in the sky. If you look at certain groups like the Ojibwe, time was measured according to the blossoming of plants, right? So you have sort of that month where strawberries blossom. And so people would say, let's meet here when the strawberries blossom. And as long as you are within the period of time when the strawberries are blossoming, you are on time. If we take the two colonial languages and cultures that have shaped what is currently Canada, the French and the English, even their understanding of time is different. Right, so in English, numbers are numerically broken down into 5s and 10s, whereas in French, numbers are actually broken down into 10s and 20s. And so we often say that French are fashionably late, but the reason why they're fashionably late is because they view, as long as you're within sort of a 20-minute time span, you are on time. Whereas in English, we tend to require people be within a sort of a 5-minute time frame, right? If someone shows up 5 minutes late for a meeting, they're still relatively on time. We're not really upset. If they show up 5 minutes early, they're gung-ho, but they're not super early that it's uncomfortable. But in French, if you show up 10 minutes late, that's fine. That's, it is what it is. Life is a thing. But if you showed up over 20 minutes late, all of a sudden that's insulting. So in recognizing that time is a colonial construct, we also recognize what that effectively has done to our society. So in colonizing time, we colonize the way people see and use time. And so we have linked time to efficiency. We've linked time to productivity. And that's something that really impacts a lot of young people, because something that you've probably noticed in hearing everyone's bios, a lot of young people on this call are doing many things. We're in school, we're launching initiatives, we're leading organizations, we're leading clubs, we are participating in elections, right? We are doing the most. And so we have a lot on our plates. And so that often creates a lot of stress, that creates a lot of mental health issues. And that's because the way we understand time is we link time to productivity. If we're not being productive, we are wasting time. And that kind of toxic relationship with time makes it really hard, right? It makes it very hard to rest. It makes it hard to relax. It makes it hard to, quote unquote, take time off, because we see that time as something we could be using to advancing one of our multiple projects or starting a new initiative to fill in a gap that we're noticing. And so at Future Ancestors, we have come up with a decolonization of time policy. And that's something that I challenge all of you to do, is to think about how you want to decolonize time. And so for us, and I'm going to click on that policy, for us, the decolonization of time effectively means that we prioritize our well-being above imaginary deadlines, right? So we have honest discussions early on in our relationships with clients about our boundaries. We honor our team's health and well-being above the colonial experience of time, and openly share this commitment with our clients. And so we empower our team members to resist deadlines and schedules that do not honor their time or schedules, take time away from work for healing and well-being, and turn on our out-of-office notifications whenever needed, right? We really sort of prioritize health above time, because time can always be, regained. Health cannot, right? It's a really interesting relationship. So we've got sort of that piece. And I'm going to be providing the slides as well as the link to our policy to the event organizers to send to people who registered for the event. So you will be getting these. The next thing I wanted to talk about was space. So let's situate ourselves. There's actually a difference between space and place. In French, it's sort of the same word. So we talk about espace géométrique et espace conceptuel. But essentially, a space is a location. So essentially, a space is sort of the four walls of a room. That's a space. It's just a physical place. But a place, and now here's what gets interesting. A place is more than a space. A place is when a space is imbued with emotions, it's imbued with memories, it's imbued with humanity, it's imbued with meaning, right? And so the idea behind the distinction between space and place is that a space is just a space, but a place holds some sort of meaning and value for us. A place creates a dimensional component where at this point we're no longer sort of in the four walls of a room, but it is a bedroom, it is a living room, and it is, you know, my mother's favorite room, it is my father's game room, it is a room where I put in all of these posters and all these different things. It's a room where I've cried when I'm sad and I've laughed when I'm happy. Or it's a room where I received a lot of verbal abuse. Or it's a room where, you know, it's always colder than you'd say. We add meaning to places. And the reason why this is important is because, once again, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about anxiety, when we talk about depression, when we talk about burnout, we have a habit of talking about the issue without talking about where the issue happened, right? And whenever we get any sort of disease, any illness, and I'm going to say generally, but really, you know, we're talking the context of mental health, theoretically, you and the disease have to be in the same place at the same time for you to have it. And so where you get the disease is equally as important as the disease you get. And so in recognizing mental health as being equally as valuable as physical health, where you get depression is equally as important as depression itself. And so in recognizing that, we then start realizing that there's places that offer us spaces of healing, right? So there's places we go to when we're heartbroken that make us feel comforted. There's places we go to when we're sad that make us feel appreciated and comforted. And there's places we go to when we are happy or when we're in whatever mood that bring us down, that strangle us, that make us feel despair. And so it's so important to recognize which places bring you joy versus which places hurt you and harm your soul. And so this can take many forms, right? But the importance is crucial because there's a couple of studies that have been done on therapeutic landscapes that show, so I'm going to cite a study that was done in Thailand. And this study in Thailand showed that women who got breast cancer were more likely to heal faster. And when I say heal faster, I mean they've gone through chemo in the hospital and now they're sort of in that recovery stage. They were more likely to heal faster when they went to places that held therapeutic meaning for them rather than simply just staying in their hotel room. Sorry, when I say hotel room, I mean hospital room, in their hospital room. And so place has a significant impact on our well-being. And so that kind of goes back to what Aaron was talking about, where when we talk about the importance of trees have been demonstrated to reduce people's anxiety, give people feelings of positivity and joy, enable people a sense of peace and a sense of rest. And so by denying people access to trees, we're creating places that are harmful to their health, places that don't inspire a sense of healing. When we think about eco-anxiety, when we think about all that's going on with our climate, when we think about our futures and how our future is potentially in jeopardy, we also need to think about places. I need to think about which places allow us to rest in our fight for the climate, which places allow us to rest in our fight for the environment, which places allow us to rest in our fight against racism, which places make us feel welcome, which places make us feel worthy, and which places harm us. And when we think about the places that harm us, we also need to ask ourselves, why does this place harm us? It's not enough to know that a place harms you, but it's also figuring out why a place harms you. Using myself as an example, I went to Toronto for the first time since 2013, a couple of weeks ago. And I remember just feeling very oppressed in the city and just feeling very negative. And so I know Toronto is not a place that I feel comfortable in. I know it's not a place that makes me feel at ease. But I had to sit down and analyze, why is it that I don't feel fully comfortable in Toronto? And I realized the reason why I don't feel fully comfortable in Toronto is because Toronto has a very sort of well-known history of racial segregation and police brutality against people who look like me. And so while I may not have experienced that firsthand in Toronto, I feel the vicarious trauma, so that's secondhand trauma, by seeing people who look like me go through these experiences. And so when I enter a place that I know has harmed other people that look like me, I feel that secondary harm. So in recognizing the impacts of place on our health, we can then choose to be in places that, if we have the power of choice, choose to be in places that support us. And if we're in places that harm us, we know what we need to deconstruct in order for us to stop feeling that sense of harm and that sense of discomfort. So to end, I want to leave you with these 3 questions to ask yourself in your efforts to improve your mental health, and your efforts to ensure and support the mental health of the other young people around you, whether you be an elder young person or whether you be a non-young person who has many young people who look up to you. So my first question is, which places have a therapeutic influence on your health? Name them. Figure them out. Have them written down in your diary. Do you have to fly there? Are you able to access there via bicycle? Are you able to walk there? Are you able to recreate some semblance of that space in your home? Which places have harmed your mental health and why? What do you need to dismantle in these spaces so that people who look like you, people who have similar ways of being to you, people who think like you are not harmed in these spaces the same way you are? And how can you change your understanding of time to support your mental health? How can you decolonize your understanding of time so that you're able to rest and truly rest, not thinking about the things you have to do, but rest and know that your rest is valid? How are you able to change your understanding of time so that all that you have on your plate, all the passion projects you have, all your academic visions are not burdens? And how can you change your understanding of time so that burnout is no longer something that you're worried about feeling? And also, just as a reminder to people, you can feel burnout from doing too much, but you can also feel burnout from doing too little. So you have to find that right milieu, that right middle place for you. And I want to share this quote by Bembra. Politics is the fundamental cause of our health divide. So in thinking about how time is a tool of colonization and has been a tool weaponized by colonization, and how we still have debates as to whether we should have a 4-day work week, whether we should allow people to take more than 2 weeks off, whether we should offer sick days and sick time and sick leave, and who's allowed to take parental leave and for how long and what do they get paid, and can we not hire someone when they're going to have a child because we know they're going to take parental leave soon? Those are politics impacting our understanding of time. And then politics impacts our understanding of place, right? Politics is imbued into every place, into every city, into every room. Politics is imbued in that. And so politics is the fundamental cause of our health divides. And it's something that we need to integrate into understanding of large metaphysical concepts such as space and place and time. So that is all for me. Here are my contact details. Feel free to follow on Instagram. Feel free to hit us up. We love hearing from people. And merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Chúk, as well. And we really appreciate you sharing your voice. I know, Chúk, when we first had that first call together, I was so impressed by, how you were able to bring a lot of streams together, your attitude, your perspective. And I will say that if someone gave me 100 guesses what you would be talking about on the call today, time and place and space would not have been them, but I feel value. I feel I gained a lot of understanding. So, I'm sure a lot of the folks also on this call feel the same, that, how we look at life, how we look at such fundamental things. I'll quickly share a personal story. It was maybe 7-8 years ago that I learned that time actually does not exist, as people understand. And when I tell that to people, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, but if you think about it, what is time, right? It's not tangible. Is it the expansion of the universe? What is it? So for us to have an understanding of these fundamental things from a decolonized perspective, as you were saying, from a indigenous, from an ancestral, from a, even a faith perspective, is a very important part of centering ourselves and giving ourselves that sense of well-being. So really appreciate how you were able to bring that to the conversation. Again, when you send us the PowerPoints and the PDF, we will include it in our email follow-up to all our participants. So thank you very much, Chúk. Merci.